Kia ora and welcome to the Aotearoa Rugby Pod, where the Springboks come out and get another win. And we ask the question, what is the real difference between these two sides? The Springboks are obviously better at closing out these games. They're obviously a better team, having won 4 in a row. We're going to have a good look into why. Also, the Australians. What happened there? They absolutely fell apart in Argentina. Plenty to chat about there. We'll look forward to the big women's game this weekend as well. The Black Ferns against England at Twickenham could be the biggest turnout in the history of women's Test rugby. And there's the small thing of wet ball gate to get into. Is that what we're calling it? Is that what we're calling it, Chip? Wet ball gate?
Oh, I've only just recovered. I was just adamant the Battle of the Bridge was coming over to the North Shore, but not to be.
If you missed it, wet ball gate involves one Bryn Hall.
Oh, they've got a free kick here. Bryn Hall went to change the ball.
It was all in the balance. Bryn just wanted a dry ball, and the ref didn't want him to have it. Bryn, what's going on?
I can't even know what to say about it. I think, to be honest, Ross, we laugh about gamesmanship, and I think the Auckland halfback, if you're talking around gamesmanship, it was pretty world class. So, yeah, look, it was an unfortunate thing. I think the funny thing is that I actually have done it like my whole career, and I actually did it 2 or 3 times during that game. But look, sometimes when there's a bit of pressure and whatnot, and there was a little bit of commentary from the Auckland boys, which is good in terms of the gamesmanship. So. They were able to get the free kick call, and we could have been. We still had the opportunity to shut it out. So, but yeah, myself and Shooter, we had a bit of a chat with the ref after. But yeah, it was all fun, obviously.
Don't you worry, that came across loud and clear on Sky. No one missed that conversation.
You're already all the way over there. I didn't realise you left.
Yeah, but it's a big call, though, bro. It's a city not having a
I agree. The game's flowing great. No one's tried to waste time.
But we're not trying to waste time.
Why did you swap a ball?
That's time off, buddy.
Why did you go to swap a ball?
Because it was weird. You could have just told me and said, like, mate, just come and don't do that. It's time off. You haven't called time back on.
I will agree with you, though, Bryn. Just as players do research on referees, maybe he should have done some research on you, because he is the most fidgety person. It used to frustrate me when I played with him. He'd be off getting a ball and we're trying to set a scrum and get the call and get ready. So he definitely likes that ball to be perfectly dry.
In case you're not in New Zealand and you missed this, Auckland versus North Harbour, Bryn gets pinged. Unfortunately, the game goes the other way, and there was some very terse conversations. Now, Bryn, I had a chat with Chris Pollock, the head of New Zealand referees, this morning, just to catch up and see what was going on with it. And instead of telling me more about the incident, he'd had a pitch for you. He said he wants you to sign up as a referee next year, and it's time to register.
I actually rang him Saturday night too, Bryn, and he said the same thing. The man wants it.
Yeah. Well, Paulie has had a few words with me, and I guess in the last couple of years, because I tend to commentate quite a bit. So, but yeah, look, players make split decisions, refs make split decisions, and the biggest thing for me, my learning is around, is being able to maybe have the conversation and say, look, I'm going to go dry the ball now. But it's one of those things, and unfortunate. It's an unfortunate thing for us, but we've got to be able to take it on the chin. And hopefully for myself now, I'll be a little bit better in those situations and being able to get the result and take it away from the ref's hands and being able to get it right.
And the Auckland players spraying the ball with a water bottle is just next level.
Well, there was quite a break in play, and I remember watching it on TV and I thought, geez, that's very kind of him that he just gave you the ball, like, very generously right before the scrum was about to be set. But yeah, it was all a game.
So between that, the international rugby, and of course your questions, YouTube comment section and your emails at aotearoarugbypod@sky.co.nz, we'll give away another Gilbert ball courtesy of our friends at Players Sports throughout the show. But let's get straight into the big thing. The Springboks chipper against the All Blacks. Another tough watch towards the back. The All Blacks once again lose their lead and lose the game. What's going on there? What needs to change?
I think we've got to give a little bit of appreciation to the opposition we're playing, and the fact that they've got a lot of experience across their squad. Like, they don't have any real inexperience across their squad, barring 1 or 2 players, but in particular in the back end of the 20 minutes. And if you look yeah, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but if you look when we were just as successful as they were between 2015 and 16, there was a genuine focus on 23. And you almost, when you had that role on the bench, you knew you were going to be on a bench. You couldn't really force your way into the starting team because that's how your style of play worked. And there was almost like a bench captain as such. It was another sort of, I suppose, team in itself. And it's a very important part. And they obviously knew and had confidence that they could still come back from where they were. We tactically changed and we made some improvement that was great to see. And I think most importantly, in and around the breakdown, like our tackle selection and our ability to get turnovers. Like we won the turnover battle against the Springboks, which I don't think we've done for a very long time. So that was a great shift from the week prior where we got turned over a hell of a lot ourselves. We almost did what they did to us a lot of the time. But I'll go back to, you could probably just copy paste from what I said last week is, put the last 20 minutes to the side, and I think if you look at the first 40, similar to Ellis Park, we left a lot of opportunities out there then that could have put a lot of pressure on that impact from that bench to play catch-up, and because we weren't able to capitalise on those opportunities. And for a lot of it, we took the 3 points, which was a change. You know, everyone's like, oh, why are we taking the 3 points? And it's not what we should be about. It was only a week ago we kicked to the corner and scored a try, and then other times we kicked to the corner and didn't get it, and people have a problem with that. So you've got to keep everything in perspective, is that the leadership group would have met, the coaching group would have met, and that was clearly their tactic, is let's try and win this game by, sort of putting that scoreboard pressure in threes. Where that fell over is the missed kicks. Because going into that half-time, I think everyone here would say we were pretty confident. We're ahead, we're dominating in and around that breakdown, as I say. Yes, we left some opportunities out there, but the game was still in our control. And I feel both those games were in our control, and it was our execution and, more importantly, our discipline in certain parts of the field. As I went quite hard at the Wallabies, the check on Kolbe just gives them such an easy kick into that 22. And we know, although that we're very strong in that maul defence, they are big physical men. They will eventually break you down.
Bryn, 6 entries into the 22 and collecting threes the entire time, or not collecting them as the kick may be. Do you feel like that is a sound thing to do in modern international rugby when scoring from mauls appears to be quite prevalent?
Yeah, it is, but I think it comes down to feel on the game. Like sometimes people might be thinking the 7 going for the corner is the best option, but when you're on the field and how you're feeling in the feel of the game is really important of what your decision-making is. And so, look, we were 9-3 up going at halftime. We had a few opportunities to be able to score tries, not from line-out mauls, but having opportunities to score points that we weren't able to. But in saying that, I think the losing of the game for us was probably just after halftime in that 40 to 60 minute mark. It was the most time in that quarter that we had the most penalties. We had 5, and we weren't able to score actually in the second quarter of that second half when Willie LaRue ends up being sent off, and we weren't able to capitalise through the points and win with him off. And then from that, the 10 minutes in turn of where the game was lost as well, where we weren't able to execute under pressure in multiple areas of our game that we needed to in pressure situations. And you look at Malcolm Marx's try, Jipper always touches on it. It's going to bite you in the ass eventually when you give them those ample opportunities inside the 22. And look, our defence of line-out mauls was really, really good. They actually didn't get a lot of pay out of it. We were really consistent and disciplined in terms of stopping those mauls. But look, you get one opportunity, you go around a little bit. TJ Petinata hits that maul because it's going forward really close to the line, and Severus is just off, just a touch, and then he goes down that short side. So the margin of errors for us is really, really small. And so those kind of time frames that I use in examples, which probably leads to the opportunities of us not being able to get that result, unfortunately, on the weekend. There
was clearly a change in tactic in our penalty strategy. Although that, Bryn's right, there is feel on the ground and so forth, but you have to feel, even when Damien took that one from 56, which I was surprised Geordie didn't step up for that one, they really went in with that mindset of accumulating in threes, and I suppose it came back to bite them, even if we'd got them all, we wouldn't have still been able to, I suppose, win. But it's a catch-22. But I always think if you make those plans in a calm, considered mindset, you do have to naturally back that on the field. But I suppose when that yellow card, sort of he went off the field, maybe that was the time to get into the corner, because we've been pretty effective against the Springboks with our driving maul as well. But maybe it was because we'd had so many opportunities in the 22 in the first half, felt like we hadn't been able to break them down, that they wanted those points. I'm not too sure.
What I find really interesting when the All Blacks kick for the corner is I feel like they take less care to try to get it towards the 5 metre line than the Springboks do. The Springboks are very aggressive at kicking right in towards that corner post. And it has backfired for them. But the All Blacks almost seem lackadaisical. Like they don't mind it going 15 metres out, which obviously doesn't provide as much pressure on the opposition.
Well, I don't think they see their maul as dominant, I suppose, as a force, is the only way that they have that ability to score the try in that situation. Like sometimes actually having 15 metres, that between that 15 to 22 metres, and you've got your attack structures, having that, I suppose, that gap. Room to move. The defence line doesn't have that ability to shoot on you, so you don't actually want it that close. You want to sort of have your eggs in both baskets, and I think for the style of play, that suits the All Blacks. But for the Springboks, they're either going to maul, and then they're going to pop off, and then they're going to go to work. And that's how they go about their business. Whereas the All Blacks, as we saw in Ellis Park, they like to come from a lot of depth, create that space, and hopefully score on on the corner.
I suppose on the flip side of that, there's the building pressure thing, Bryn, where obviously when you get down within that 5 metres, that's when you start forcing the penalties. And if you look at the All Blacks, out of the 13 penalties conceded, 11 of them are when they're on defence. You look at the Springboks, they actually concede more penalties on attack, and I presume that's from opposition trying to get turnovers, but they concede more on attack than they do on defence. And that, I suppose, is when pressure builds on the All Blacks, when you're back-to-back penalties on defence.
You look at where we've had our penalties in the last 2 test matches against the South Africans. It's been in that second half period. Like we had 5 on the weekend in that third quarter, which was the most that we had. And then in tight situations, again, when you're given opportunities at back ends of games to be able to go to their line out more, or might even be using their forwards around the corner, which they're very, very good at in that 22 metre zone, you've just got to be able to try and stay on in those moments. And to South Africa's credit, when the game has been tight, they've been able to go to their DNA in terms of being able to make it really clear, line out more with Malcolm Marx. We saw Grant Williams last week, even though it was a back scoring, they went around that corner and got into that 22 metre zone with that kind of mindset of, right, this is our DNA and we're going to score points off it. So, and then, for the All Blacks as well, it's been able to take probably an understanding of how the ref is officiating it as well. When you're getting 11 or 12 penalties from defensive errors, you're hoping to think that you can drive solutions around, look, boys, we've given away X amount of penalties defensively. We need to be squeaky clean and being able to talk around what that's looked like. So, but obviously as well, look, I thought the All Blacks played really, really well. Again, the 2 test series, they've obviously lost, but if they look at deeply in terms of watching their game, look, the line-out defence was really, really good. We know how good their line-out maul is. I don't think they scored a line-out maul, even though they did win off a little bit with Malcolm Marx. Their scrum set piece, there was not a lot of dominance in terms of the South Africans being able to get really easy penalties collectively a lot of times during the test match. And our chop tackle and our breakdown work was outstanding on the weekend. Tupou Vai, Cody Taylor, Sam Cane in and around that area. And lastly, our attack. Our gain line percentage was at just over 40%, which is our best gain line percentage of the year. So these are all areas that we were really good against the South Africans that we touched on. I thought, could we get the gain line right? Could we use our ball in air? And we were able to do that with Damien McKenzie, Bowden Barrett in the first test match, and even instances on that test match on the weekend, being able to get out to wit. So a lot of positives, but probably the learning and the solution is the last 10 minutes of the game. When the game's really, really tight, the decision-making and making the right decisions and the execution to be able to do that in high pressure is probably something the South Africans were a little bit better in the last 2 test matches.
Yeah, they've had more experience, and as we said, that pays a lot of dividends. But even looking back, when we had the likes of Whitelock, Retallick, Aaron Smith, Richie Mo'unga, we still lost. So I think everyone's been a little bit hypercritical of the bench and some of the players that are starting. And so I think I agree with Bryn. There is a lot of growth in our game. I know people aren't going to accept that, which is fair enough, and I'm all for that because I think that's our strength. However, where the South Africans are very, very smart, they gave away 7 penalties in the second half. We gave away 8. It's not a big difference, but it's where they give them away. They're very calculated about where it's normally right close to their line or it's right further out. They don't get in that territory in between because they don't try to accumulate through desperation in their D that leads the ref to be thinking yellow cards. I think the Sia Khaleesi try came about because we were under heavy penalty pressure, and that fear of a yellow card just didn't allow us to probably push the envelope at breakdown time, which didn't allow us to slow the ball. And when you've got those big bodies in motion, even though they're up against big bodies, you don't have time to get set, you don't have time to sort of double team them, and they have that ability to sort of come around the corner and get between two defenders, which just means you're eventually going to get there. That no one was stopping them, sort of deadpan or driving them back, but it's because we were probably a little bit too cautious in and around that breakdown to allow our D that opportunity, if that makes sense.
Because that maul wasn't going anywhere, because they made 4 metres in 6 attempts across that maul, I kind of felt like actually they went away from it quite quickly. Like it might have been part of their strategy. Hey, look, we've sucked these people in now. Let's go elsewhere. This is not our only option at a maul time.
No, but also respect to the week before.
Yeah.
Like the All Blacks fronted up maul D throughout this whole tour. And I think that's a credit to them. But like with any system, when you are fixated, on trying to stop something, it does leave you potentially a little bit slower to react, or that fixation, it meant TJ Perenara came in to make sure it wasn't a maul try, but then that stresses the defensive system somewhere else. So, every action has a reaction. I mean, I don't need to tell people that, but those sort of small margins at the moment, South Africa are very patient and very calculated about how and when they take advantage of it.
So, Bryn, how do the All Blacks build to create those small margins going in their favour rather than the opposition favour? Is this a time thing? Is this a personnel thing? What is it that gets them over the line in these two games instead of behind it?
It's experience, and Jip, you've touched on it a lot in terms of not the bomb squad, but the reserves that do come on have been together for a long period of time. So the confidence that you've had, the amount of work that you've done, whether it be through the trainings, the communications, the conversations, generically for a long period of time, you get confidence with it. And knowing for myself, being in teams that you've had a lot of success with in the time and the years that you've spent together, you just feel confident, and it becomes very instinctual and decisive in terms of your decision making. So I just think for this group in these last 2 test matches, that area and those guys that went through that experience will be a lot better, knowing for the back end of the year and the future years that they experience the hostile environment in a furnace like. And the only thing is they're going to get better from that experience moving forward.
But Beauden Barrett and TJ Perenara are 2 of the most experienced bench players doing the rounds.
Well, Bodie's already done it against England. Stop getting fixated. Everyone's fixated on one moment. Malcolm Marx was poor last week, but no one's talking about it because they won. Yeah. Everything just needs to be put into context. I think what we can control is there's so much information that's gone in terms of how the All Blacks are going to play that as a team and as a squad, that's not in their DNA yet. They don't know, they're not solid on this is who we are. Like the Springboks have been together and around coaching group, everyone, they know who they are. They know how they're going to play and they don't go away from it. That's what happens when you have a squad and a team together for that long. In and around a lot of our decision making, that high percentage play mindset and that prior planning to be really clear on what we're trying to achieve is massive. And I suppose 56 metres out, not at altitude, is that a high percentage play to go for a shot at goal? Or do we back ourselves that the week before we went into the corner and we scored a try? Although I know we highlighted that it potentially would have been penalised in other games with Lomax going around, but it's still an efficient platform for us to go and score points. And it felt like we were just fixated on and crawling that scoreboard by threes that it blinded us from what was actually happening, or that feel, as Bryn talks about, in the game. We made some major calls. I did not see that team coming. The way that team was named. And I know it was through a tactical shift, but it was a lot of change.
Wallace Sititi was impressive.
Massive. Probably to the point, he probably doesn't, if Ethan's fit, you can't really drop Ethan, but it was the first sort of loose forward trio mix for me. Like Sam Cane had, he had 45 rucks, and then between Wallace and Artie, they would have had probably about 22 total. So that balance is good. People look at that and it's like, oh, it should be, but Sam Cane had 3 carries, whereas Wallace and Artie had 15 and 10. But again, and Sam made the bulk of the tackles. But that balance was that balance that we got so used to with a Jerome Kino at 6, and probably with Shannon Frizzell, you know, at the World Cup, and that ability, man, the way he got across the gain line when he was carrying was so impressive, and his little short footwork to get out the other side, those little dents he made in that South African defence. But unfortunately, we made them tackle at 80% but didn't score a try. So that last skill execution really, really hurt us.
Been put into the cauldron in terms of like your first start test match against the #1 team in the world, and I thought he held himself nicely. I think it took him a little bit of time, more so defensively, in that first 20 minutes with the tackling, but once he got over that kind of initial 20 minutes, I thought he was outstanding. And then, you know, there's probably going to be conversations around, you know, is Will better off in the wing or is he better off at fullback? Because I think on the weekend, probably expecting Will to be more a little bit involved in the game, but it probably just didn't come to him in terms of, because the South Africans went to that contestable game and got a lot of pay out of that, and not been able to obviously get into those long kick battles. And so, you know, that's where Will's strengths are. So there might be a conversation around, does Will go into 14 and you keep Bowden at 15? Because I thought Bodie came on really well, but then as well, Bodie's really good coming on that last 20 minutes, which I thought he did some great things as well. So those are probably the couple of the positions that I would probably question. You've got Caleb Clark as well, probably another one who I thought was really good when he played in his last test match. But I think the crux of the spine, I think, won't change as much, but there might be a few tinkers in terms of like what kind of team that they are playing or how they feel that they might need. Look, they pretty much changed their whole back three. We talked about it on our WhatsApp group. We weren't expecting the changes in and around that. So I don't think this coaching group will be afraid, depending on who they are playing. Guys will get opportunities in certain positions where they feel they might need a type of player in that position.
We did a lot of contestable kicks as well. And if you look at, I suppose, the personnel, like a Will and a Caleb, it worked because that suits their game. Whereas I suppose I think of Mark and Sevu as more those cross-field attacking kicks, sort of flat. You don't get in that aerial battle because they've got that ability to beat defenders at will. Both of them are both slippery. So it's then, you know, do you look at if contestable kicks are going to be massive, and if contestable kicks are going to be where, I suppose, sides think they can target us, there are, I suppose, players, you know, playing, you know, use Sean Stevens as an example. He's very good aerially, and his ability on the wing and his ability, I suppose, in the air, potentially could come into the mix. Are they going to change the squad? No, but if we're going to stick with that sort of back three, then I would have thought, you know, you'd back their fitness and their ability to get down the field, you know, even at the end there, rather than doing the contestable, could have we gone long and just backed our defence to force an error or, you know, force a penalty or whatever it may be, versus, you know, something that sort of played into the South Africans' hand. I'm not too sure, but these are the things they need to make decisions on, and then understand, okay, that's what we're good at. That's how we're going to play, then you've got to pick and select around that.
So please send us through more of your emails, aotearoa@sky.co.nz. We attempt to get through as many of them as we can along the way. We hold some for later sometimes if they're bigger picture questions, and we'll eventually try to get to them. Question, maybe related to what Jip said earlier, from Isaac October, and Isaac will give you the Players Sports Gilbert Ball this week for your question. He says, all I've heard since before the last World Cup is how good the Boks are and how they deserve to be number one. Every interview I keep hearing, they're the best in the world. This is all our players hear every day. So is it any surprise that we implode against SA? Perhaps we're paying them too much respect. Our boys have the skills to beat everyone. What's missing is belief that we can. We'll smash Aussie because we believe we can. Do you buy into that? Is that the kind of conversation that will happen within a squad? No. Are they reading the papers? Are they getting that on their feeds on Instagram?
It's about putting yourself in the very best position to be able to deliver what you can control. You can't control the opposition. Yes, you need to understand and you need to know what's coming, but you've got to control what you can control, and that's you, your preparation, your team's preparation, how you're going to play and execute under pressure. A lot of that, you know, there is a mental element. Maybe there are certain individuals that, you know, think they're number one, but it would be a little bit silly not to be realistic. Like, you know, there's always been that element of respect, even when the All Blacks have been on top. It doesn't matter if you're playing, you know, a Uruguay at the World Cup or in a World Cup final against the Springboks. My belief and my understanding of all my experience in and around the teams I've played for is it shouldn't look any different. If it does, that's a concern. Is that really the case? I don't believe so.
Bryn?
When you're playing against a team like that, your preparation goes a little bit deeper, knowing in tune with what's coming. And so you actually have those conversations, your training's a little bit harder, you're within your own preparation, right? Yourself internally, and then once you get yourself done internally of what it looks like for you, you're having conversations with groups that you need to. But look, they would have been frothing in the mouth to be able to get an opportunity to go over to South Africa and try and get it done. But again, like what Jip said, the last, a few moments in high percentage players and when you're needing to be able to execute under pressure, it's just one thing that we weren't able to get right in 2 test matches. And the margin of error we've touched on with a lot of other teams. We've talked about it with Australia, with Argentina, the fine line of margins that they need to be able to get wins against top tier teams. We're just in a position, we're probably not at that extent with how long a game has to be, but a fine margin of 5 to 10 minutes or a span of 3 to 4 minutes, that's kind of where we unfortunately lost the test matches in the last 2 weeks.
I just think it's just grabbing. It's reaching for something. It's reaching for a solution or just to fill the frustration of the loss. But I think you have to tip the cap to the opposition. It's not all about us. Like they will go down potentially in South African history as the best team that's run over a span of time, and Sia Khaleesi will go down as probably the best captain. We know how heroic some of the South African and Springbok captains, but what he and Rassie have managed to do together with a lot of other people supporting around them is phenomenal. It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
Bryn, I'm interested in what you touched on before about, those moments, those 50-50 moments, those fine margins. If doubt starts to creep in,
collectively as a team, if you feel again that momentum isn't with you, we see it today with a lot of players. They come into a circle, whether that's in a mini unit, the forwards are together in one circle, or the backs are together in one circle, or collectively you're in a circle as a team. That's when you can be able to collectively see someone, get your eyes, and be able to have a deep breath, which you see in most teams. But from that, it's the messages that you are giving in those situations to try and get into that next task. So if it's emotion, for example, and you're saying, boys, we just need to be more physical and let's just get our heads, our mindset right. That's not really giving you a solution and really trying circumstances. So, it might be, boys, we're really, really struggling in this contact area for the last 5 to 6 minutes. So I need you to get your body height really, really low, and I need you to hold your feet, get a bit of footwork, and our cleaners, both sides of the ball carrier, I need you to get nice and low and clean these guys out 1.5 meters. So then it's a solution, and as a player, right, okay, we're losing this part of the area. I don't know why we're losing it, but then when someone gives you that solution, you can see it and hear it. You're like, okay, right, that's what I'm looking for in that next 4 to 5 minutes. And that's just an example. So those conversations will be happening in a big group, or maybe between players that are walking to lineouts or walking to scrums and talking on the run around what that solution kind of looks like, to try and at least then in pressure situations, what you're doing, and then it's on you as the individual to go out and try and execute that.
It's also like we've spoken about at length in last week. When I say preparation, it's not just a word, it's recreate what makes you feel pressure. Recreate your mistakes. Do it time and time again.
I find that really interesting because I've spent an entire career talking to sportsmen and constantly being frustrated by being told it's just about the process. And I'll be like, what's the process? And they'd be like, that's for us to know and you to find out. But I can see how
it's specific to a person, though.
Very, very,
because Michael Jordan made up, and I'm trying to use examples that are out there that people understand. I'm not trying to hide from rugby examples, but it's Michael Jordan made up that a player said something poorly about him.
Yeah.
Because if someone didn't back him and said he wasn't the best in the world, he took that personally, and that made him a better athlete. That made him more ruthless. It made him, even if he made a mistake, he was still coming for you, and it was personal, and that's what got him going. But for some people, that would derail them. They'd be chasing you around the field trying to smash you, and then they'd miss their roll over here. So you've got to make sure you understand who you are and what you stand for and how you tick, to then create the process. Each individual has their process.
I know, Ross, you're like, process, but if you can go next task, and it's more like you're like a robot, really. You aren't fixated on outcome. You're just fixated on being able to do what you can do in those moments. And if you're not getting it right, what's a solution? How can I find myself be able to get on the next task and continually go like that? Because there's so much emotion in your game sometimes you're not going to get things right. And the more times you start to be able to like play on emotion and feel, that's when you really start to get yourself in trouble. And like guys like Jip, if he sees that emotion from other players, he's like, we've got him. We've got him in the red. And that might be 5 minutes that he might need to be able to try execute a pass, a line out, a scrum, and you get a penalty or a knock on done against you. So habits is bloody crucial in anything.
They need wins, though, as well. Like, as individuals, you need to execute it under pressure in a game, on TV, with people. But it's when you do that, you highlight that, you understand that, you have that as a clip, that when you are challenging yourself for confidence...
You know you can do it.
Let's go back and have a look at how good you are. Like, so many times, when you're struggling for form, you're so fixated on the solution that you almost overthink, you know, how to get out of it. Whereas, you know, I heard Cooper Cronk say a few years back, and I really liked the way he articulated it. He goes, I used to go back and watch all my awesome games. And he goes, I'll just sit there, geez, I'm good. Do you know what I mean? Like, and that makes logical sense, because for him to get his confidence back is just that visual reminder. You know, for other people it'll be different, but like, what I think we're trying to say is, as a team, you need to know how you want to play and what your DNA is, and then as an individual, you need to know how you best fit into that and what you need to nail. What are your big rocks? Yes, we want to improve in little areas as individuals, but what are your big rocks that feed into that? South Africans have that down pat. Make no bones, they will not have 10 turnovers in their next test at the breakdown. They won't allow it. Rassi will be like, that is average.
Yep.
You know, you've seen all those things on Instagram about playing for South Africa and, you know, what it means to them. You know, he'll be able to put up all those turnovers and go, are you putting yourself on the line for South Africa in this ruck?
Certainly it seems with the Springboks that sense of doing duty for their country is just ginormous. Speaking of the big rocks and how it allows them to do other little things, we got an email through from Damien Jones, which was a really interesting one. He goes into a bit of detail. I've cut it down slightly, but he says at 47:51, this is on the game clock, South Africa has an attacking line out on the AB's line. Malcolm Marx has the towel in hand to throw. He then transfers the ball to Kolbe, who appeared to be positioned as the receiver, the halfback at the line out. SA had 8 players in the lineup because Marx went there and Kolbe threw in. Phases after that, Sia Kolisi scores. Should there be a halfback? When is a line-out formed? Should this have been a penalty? So many questions around that Kolbe throw-in. When is a line-out formed? So I got on the blower to a referee and asked that question, and the basic answer to that question is when there's at least 2 players from each team and a hooker in place, the line-out is formed. So technically, that change late shouldn't have been allowed to happen. And saying that, geez, great idea. And the fact they get away with it, give it a crack.
Yeah, and the hard thing with that, it's, you know, we saw something similar, but not as late a change against Australia. I think just putting myself in my players' hat, because these things happen all the time at line-out. You know, we've had previous years where the guy at the half comes in to lift and, you know, a player doesn't exit. So now there's the rule that if someone comes in, someone must remove. They can have as many numbers as they want. They don't need the half-back. It was the lateness of the switch, but that was purposeful, as we know.
Yeah, that was part of the show.
That is. However, when I look at it from a defensive set, we were down to defend them all. So I don't think we would have added a number. Okay, and I feel like if it was uncomfortable, they felt that pressure, you'd say something. Whenever there's late change, especially at a line-out, normally there's someone that has that role to say, hey, ref, late change, you've got to give us time, or is it a free kick? What's going on here? And you see it time and time again about, you'll hear line-outs start roaring and, you know, and it's all there to put the ref under pressure to make a decision. I felt, when you look at that, they were comfortable and they stopped them all. And as I said before, it wasn't so much that whatever happened there didn't mean Kolisi scored that try. It was more that the penalty pressure they were under just didn't allow them to be as physical and dominant or push the envelope at those breakdowns.
But a free kick would have meant that try didn't get scored if it was awarded.
Yeah, I've never seen a free, like they normally settle it down, you know, and not to make it about Bryn's situation, so often you'll see in refs, in those big moments, they'll step back and say, guys, just calm down. Let's just reset, get the scrum down,
Yeah.
It happens at lineouts as well. I don't see any ref giving that a free kick.
We just reset it and carry on.
Yeah, just calm down. Okay,
Yeah.
Kolbe, you go back there, Marx, throw in. You're not doing that. Or if you are, New Zealand, you've got time now to adjust. That's what they normally do.
Yeah.
It was missed, but I still don't think a free kick would have been given.
And just to clarify the rule, Law 18 states there is a minimum of 2 in the line-out, but throwing team determines the maximum. So you can have as many people as you like in that line-out if you
we've
want
seen
to,
it. There's
and no
backs at
halfback.
fronts of-
You can do as much as you like. There is no limit there.
Jipper, his throw was right on the money.
Think how many
Pretty good,
times they
man.
would have
Right.
practiced it. But if you go back and watch it, I don't think it affects the All Blacks at all.
Yeah.
I think that penalty pressure was the big factor that was in the back of their mind.
Yeah, having an extra person in the line-out didn't stop them from
It actually
shutting down the
suits them.
drive. Yeah.
If you look at it from a defensive actor,
yeah.
there's less bodies out wide that they have to defend. And even if they are to come back in, you can track them as a player because they've got to come from the blind and around.
Now, there was another game on the weekend, and that was Argentina versus Australia, and it was something else to watch. Only last week we were saying, is this a watershed moment for the Wallabies? You know, they showed guts in the rain. They got there in Argentina. And then Bryn, they just fell to pieces.
A little bit. They fell to pieces because the Argentinians and how they ended up playing. But look, I was looking at 20-3 and I was thinking, this is like, geez, Australia are going to turn a corner. They're doing some nice things. But if you just look after that, it was an absolute avalanche of what the Argentinians did really, really well. Like probably the first time, Jipper, that I've seen their scrum be that dominant in terms of being able to play on top of them. So I thought they were pretty impressive there. And then their interplay, because of their gain line success that they were rocking at 52% gain line. We touched on the All Blacks at 40%, and the South Africans are usually at that kind of 47, 48, usually. And they were on top of the Australians consistently. And I thought their skill set from their big men, their loose forward trio, probably Marteta with a couple of good offloads, Gonzalez, even Creamer as well. They were awesome in and around keeping the ball alive and using footwork, and that attacking ability of their loose forward was really good. And lastly, their backs. Their ability to be able to square people up on the edge consistently for the majority of that match was so impressive to watch. And so it's not like the Australians on that attacking side were putting them under pressure, but their ability to be able to get the last pass, which you probably think with the All Blacks, we weren't able to score points in that game try-wise, but the Argentinians were ruthless in terms of being able to get that ball to the edge, make the right decision, and that gain line percentage, they just blew them off the park. Didn't really give them anything. I think it was 20-3, and then after that, they scored 5 consecutive tries before Tate McDermott scored his try off a quick tap. So, you talk around momentum, and one of the things that probably led to that is that they only had 2 penalties post the 21st minute. So we talk around discipline being a big area of work on for the Argentinian teams. They got 3 in that first 20 minutes, but then post that to have 2 penalties in a 60-minute, 59-minute span, it seems like it's a good DNA mix if they can get that right for the Argentinian team.
If you look at Argentina, where they got that massive gain line from was they were playing pop touch. Like, they didn't clean rucks. They would literally just bend the defence on the edge and they'd just pop it up. And then that player would go through the middle, they'd go to the other edge, pop it up. And you just can't, I was talking about the All Blacks not being able to get set even when they had some time. Like, the Australian defence just could not get set. And a lot of it's around their tackle choice. So they're not going low, but they're not going on the ball. And then they're riding tackles, which takes them across the gain line. And then once they're going, they're not like sort of releasing to try and get on the ball because of that dominance, which is allowing that pop. So I think their tackle choice it just went backwards massively. But I do think you said watershed moment for them. I think the water actually helped them defensively the following week, which helped their result. But Argentina played extremely well, and they played that style that we know, that pop offload game that was freakish. But then also, again, with all the attacking opportunities Australia had, and I celebrated them for the lack of rucks they played outside of their 22, or, even between the 22s the week prior. I think 61% of their rucks was in between the 2 22s, and 48 rucks between halfway and the 22. And they just don't kick, Bryn. Like, there's no attacking kick play, there's no fast ball, there's no pop touch, it's just man, for a defensive side, it's just too easy, and it's just putting too much pressure on guys to do something brilliant.
You know, you look at the All Blacks in that second test match, how many attacking little kicks to be able to stunt that defence that the Argentinians do have. They like to be able to bring a little bit of line speed. They like to zero ruck quite a lot. So you're going to see a lot of Argentinians that are in the line. And you look at Will Jordan in that second test match, even Damien McKenzie being able to put those little chips early on just to maybe stunt that ability of that line speed pressure. So
don't you think, though, with those tight forwards, like I'm just thinking when you're not looking to tip and you're that tight and it's predictable, that's when you're expected to get a quick ruck.
Yep.
Not fight in the contact. Like, I don't know why they're fighting in the contact, because you know that's what's coming. What I can't understand is, okay, just be a little bit submissive with the ball in hand and get that quick ball so a Gordon can come and whip it off the deck and then you can try and catch them off guard. But it's like they've got that set up and then they wrestle with them, which just feeds into your defensive hand because you can have that time to get set. It just... I don't know. It just doesn't. I can't work it out.
When you think about the great Australian teams like Rod McQueen's Wallabies, they were really good at that. The Brumbies, so good at hitting the deck as the tackler came
Pretty
towards
much.
them, cleaning through, and then Gregan would have the ball because Larkham would just go.
And Larkham's flat, and he's got bodies in motion. It's just...
Yeah. Oh, and Finnegan's inside, whatever you wanted to do.
Yeah. I just don't know why they don't kick.
I agree. You know, even like in the one in the wet, and this is the week previously, they went through like 30 odd phases. So I think it's marrying up an understanding of where you want to play your rugby. We've talked about this a lot with this Australian team, Jip. Like they seem to get it maybe a week where they might go a little bit more contestable. Because if you look at the nines for the Australians, the Reds and the Waratahs, predominantly massive contestable game. They get into that zone of the field, the no man zone, and they're putting up contestable. Sometimes they even slow it right down. They get into a part of the field to be able to set it up, and then you can go on to be able to go into a contest, or you can go and blitz through and be able to slow down the ball. It's like, man, if you're a forward, I don't know, Jip, and you're going in the no man zone with numbers like that, and you're getting no pay out of it. It's not like it's a defensive area that the team's making. It's just unnecessary work that you've got to be able to try and work in your attack shape, and you're getting no gains from it.
Thinking about the Wallabies then, a couple of weeks away from Bledisloe 1 in Sydney, do they stand any chance?
I think you have to acknowledge they do, because at times they have played well. But I'm confident in that All Black forward pack and the way we held up against the Springboks. If they give as many opportunities as they have, like their scrum capitulated, Aussie scrum, their heart defence, you know, you talk about playing on the back foot or defending on the back foot was really poor in the test just been and has been against the Springboks. You know, they'll need to make sure their discipline is absolutely picture perfect, that they don't give easy access into the 22 for the All Blacks. But I've said it even after the Springboks, they do have the cattle there and the ability to do so. But they may need to look at the balance of their 23 because a Taniela Tupou actually against tiring bodies and an Angus Bell may be better, and use the two veterans and Ella Latoa and Slipper to start the game and see what impact they can have in and around that. But, you know, it will definitely have the All Blacks going in as favourites.
I probably want to see a dominant performance from the All Blacks, if I've been honest. Like, I think with the cattle that Australia have and the struggles that they've had against an Argentinian side, like I'll be pretty... not disappointed, but I think that's what we need as an All Black team, to see what we probably saw against the Argentinians, the intent, the dominance that we showed and we're able to be. We looked like the more dominant team. So they'll go through everything they need to do. They'll respect the Wallabies and that. But for me, sitting back and watching this, I want to see it, the improvement that we've got against the South Africans and dominating this Australian team.
No, games in women's rugby don't get any bigger than the game that we've got this weekend coming up. England, the best team in the world, the most consistent team in the world, a hell of a powerful team, at home at Twickenham against the Black Ferns. Earlier in the year, 58,000 turned up to watch England play against France. They're expecting more this time around. Probably going to be the biggest live crowd ever for a women's rugby test for the world champions versus the world number one. Last week, after the show finished, we had the chance to catch up with Steve Jackson, the Black Ferns assistant coach. He's had a bit to do with these blokes as well at Harbour. And he talked to us a little bit about this game and what they need to do to get over the line against a dominant English team. With the WXV starting a couple of weeks later, can you talk a little bit about exactly what you need to achieve in this England game? What are you setting out to do?
Make no bones about it. We lost to them in the WXV last year. They had a point to prove, and we probably rested on our laurels a little bit in that game. But again, when you go out and play, there's always another 15 players on the field that are trying to do the same. So, we were on the receiving end of, not a good result for us. And, there's been, ever since then, we knew that this game could potentially turn up, and it has. So we're pretty excited. Look, we've trained pretty hard. We've done a lot of work over the last sort of few weeks. Just come out of a camp, 3-week camp where we, all our training and things like that were just about England.
The line-out maul is a big area that they've been really good at. That'll be some of the things that you're looking at to try and nullify that set piece and how dominant they've been the last probably 2 to 4 years.
But again, we've looked at all that. Dan Cron's done some outstanding work for us in terms of the maul defence and even on our own maul attack. So, we're going to use that as our weapon as well. But we know where they're going to be coming, with the influence of John Mitchell in terms of defensive stuff. Mike Delaney's done a great job in regards to our attack to try and find some holes in their defensive line. But we're quietly confident, mate. We've done a lot of work. We've prepared the team really well. They had a week off, and now we're looking at test week. So, we're pretty excited.
Just to go back to that line out more, I saw a stat that Marley Packer scored 43 tries in 100 tests or something. That shows what it's like for them, really, over a long period of time for her. When you look at your team and countering that, I suppose the most important thing is not line out maul defence at all, it's not letting them get there.
And because they've got such a good kicking game, they don't play too much inside their own half. They like to get down into your territory and make you make mistakes. So, we've got to look after the ball and cherish possession that we get. Because we know in these big matches, you'll only get 1 or 2 opportunities when you've got ball in hand and you've got to make them stick. And again, it's a huge occasion for us. The crowd's going to play its part. We believe that it's going to be a world record crowd there. So again, it's something that our team hasn't experienced either. So not only the game's going to be a big occasion, playing at Twickenham in front of a crowd like that, it's going to be the same as well. What
are you as coaches? How have you been trying to get these girls to understand what it looks like with obviously not being able to do it?
Yeah, look, we've done some things within our training, within our gym sessions and things like that to bring some noise into our environment.
You turn up stereo with the crowd, or what's happening in the gym in order to replicate it?
Plenty of noise, plenty of crowd noise, every opportunity we can get. Ian Saunders, our mental skills coach, has done a great job there in preparing, our ladies for, what may come and what's going to come. But again, as I said, we just need to make sure that, there's going to be a lot of emotion and how relaxed our players can be and knowing that they can go out there and play the game that they want to play.
I've been a former loose forward, Jackie. You must be stoked with the amount of loose forward depth that you have in your squad. Obviously with Olsen Baker coming back and you've got Sa'i and Mikaeli Tu'u and Kennedy Simons there as well, especially with what's coming with that English forward pack and even the French. You must be pretty happy in terms of what you're getting out of your loose forward trio at the moment.
Oh, extremely happy, Bryn. Not just, the talent that they have, but it's the physicality that we're really excited about. All of our loose forwards at the moment, are really hungry and, there's a lot of competition there and there's a lot of competition within the squad. So selecting a team is going to be very, very difficult. But that's what we want. We want that competition and, part of what we're doing is trying to make sure that our players are competing every day. So selections are going to be really, really difficult. But yeah, we've got an exciting loose forward trio. They're really robust. They're good line out exponents. They're good with ball in hand, defensively sound. And they like the aggression. They like the contact part of the game. So I'm pretty sure that although we know that England are going to be coming around the corner and that our girls are going to welcome that, I think.
Before we let you go, Bryn Hall, James Parsons, their time at North Harbour. I mean, I hear a lot of coach chat week on week on week. The WhatsApp lights up, the the show's on, the rugby geek element comes out of it. Can you give us an insight into what it was like to coach these two blokes?
Yeah, how much time have I got?
As long as you like.
Oh, look, mate, as a first-year head coach and then coming into North Harbour and then obviously with Bryn and Jipper's experience, it was awesome for me. They had a grasp on, the team environment, where we're heading, and that was one of the things that we worked really hard on when we were at North Harbour was that environment and culture. And when you got, a couple of guys like those two in the positions that they played in, it was really easy, and it was a good transition for myself going from an assistant coach into a head coach. But not only that, mate, I'm probably blowing a bit of smoke here, but just really good men off the field, good families and come from good backgrounds, mate. And, although we did some tough stuff on the field and on the training pitch, mate, we had some good times off the field. And, there was one thing that we knew how to do when we were at Harbour is have a laugh and enjoy what we were doing. And, I think sometimes you can lose sight of that. The reasons why you play the game, but they're rugby through and through, and not that I really enjoyed at the clubs that they were playing for. One's at Northcote and the other one's at Takapuna. Not the two best clubs in North Harbour, but look, mate, they were fantastic.
And I'll give you a bottle of wine there, Jacko, mate. Those are the most positive things I've ever heard from you, me old mate. So I'll give you a bottle of wine, send it to Waiheke for you.
Sounds good to me. I think that's why I said it.
Well played. Get it in the fridge. Awesome, mate. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Have a great trip.
Hey, no worries. Go well, men.
Steve Jackson had plenty of good things to say about Brynner.
It's because he's abused the poor guy for so many years. He's in debt. He's trying to get some credit back.
Do you talk to the coaches the way you talk to the refs, Brynner?
Oh, geez, this is going to be a new thing that happens every week, is it? Just something different that I can jump on now. So, no, it was probably around the other way, if I'm being honest, Ross. I was just put on my place from Jacko, so no doubt he'd be doing the same with
You are very good with the refs. Like, it is a strength of yours. That was probably the first time I've ever seen a ref fall out with you early in a game.
Yeah, the frustration side of it. Probably you talk around emotion that we talked about a little bit of this earlier in the podcast that, when results aren't going your way, you probably want a little bit more and you're a little bit more, trying to put a bit more pressure in that and whatnot. So great learning for me. Look, still being able to learn it at my age and understanding that, could have been a lot better in that space. So
I think it'll be a good learning for him as well, just quietly. There'll be no beers for him on the North Shore, I can assure you of that.
Fair enough. Now, we do have another big game this weekend. Tasman, having won the Shield off Hawke's Bay, are now going to face Wellington. A Wellington team that could be bolstered. Yeah,
you have to think. And isn't it a beautiful sight, seeing the All Blacks get up early, and you saw Will Jordan, Ethan Blackadder, Dave Havili celebrate that kick. And you say there's no connection with our top side down to our community sides. I just think that...
You see that enough to...
Yeah. But it's not just their team. Like, there was other players there. Like, that, the Ranfurly Shield's a beautiful thing. And I think, sometimes provincial rugby does get a bit of a kick in the guts because of the crowds and stuff, but there is still a lot of energy and excitement in and around the competition, and I think it should come in droves this weekend now through the excitement of having the Shield. But you'd have to think, Bryn, Billy Proctor, Ruben Love and Dave Havili will drop back for this game.
You talk around NPC, those boys coming back, and every time you get a calibre, look, we've had Wallace Sititi, he came in, and the kind of boost that he gave our forwards in our group, getting All Black to come back. So I know those boys will be chomping at the bit. It's hard when you're holding tackle bags and you just want to be able to get out there. So you're going to probably see a lot of energy in terms of those All Black boys coming back and try and, get the minutes, but staking their claim to be able to try and get some minutes for the All Blacks in a few weeks' time.
I'll tell you what, the way Wellington are going, though, how could you drop Clark or Umaga Jensen or Higgins? So potentially they may have to come off the bench, the big dogs. You wouldn't want to stunt the rhythm that Wellington have going into the Shield Challenge.
Yeah. So plenty of good games of footy coming up this weekend. We've got that huge game between England and the Black Ferns, of course. We've got Bryn playing for Harbour. We've got a full NPC round, an FPC round. Plenty to talk about So thank you very much for joining us once again on the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. We really appreciate you reaching out with your emails at aotearoarugbypod@sky.co.nz, and also within the comments section. We try to get to as many as we possibly can. Of course, thanks to James Parsons once again for his insight. Thanks to Bryn Hall for being very patient and copping a lot of grief this week. We appreciate it.
Hey, as long as, mate, Ross, if you need me for any of that, mate, just keep using me.
And thank you to everyone who helps put the show together. We really appreciate it. Catch you next time. Mā te wā.